This video contains real events. While it does not include graphic visuals or language, the content may be disturbing to some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. This is a true crime documentary. All events described are based on real investigations, public records, and news reports. We use animation and narration to tell the story in a way that informs and respects the victims and their families. Let's begin. He looked like someone's grandpa, but behind those tired eyes and worn-out clothes was a man hunting humans. There's something peaceful about the forest, the smell of pine needles, the quiet, the way the world feels still out there, far from the chaos of everyday life. For many, hiking through the woods brings calm, healing, peace. But in the early 2000s, across several states in the southeastern United States, those same woods became a hunting ground. Not for animals, not for sport, but for people. And the man behind it? He didn't look like a monster. He didn't scream, shout, or raise suspicion. He was quiet. He was polite. He was the kind of man you wouldn't notice, just an old guy wandering around with a dog and a van. But that's exactly what made Gary Michael Hilton so dangerous. He was a drifter, no fixed address, no full-time job, just a backpack, a few supplies, and a dog named Dandy that followed him everywhere. He wandered from forest to forest, sleeping in national parks, parking lots, and trailheads. Sometimes he even helped people load their gear, or pointed out good hiking paths. To many, he seemed helpful, even harmless. But underneath that quiet image was a predator, a man who saw hikers, especially women hiking alone, not as fellow adventurers, but as easy targets. His pattern was always the same. He'd choose secluded forest areas, wait for the right person, and strike when no one else was around. To the world, he looked like a lonely old man with a loyal dog, but in truth, he was hiding something far darker. One YouTube viewer who watched his interrogation said it best: "He made my skin crawl. I couldn't even finish watching him talk. He was so smug, like he was proud of it." Long before his name ever hit the news, Gary Hilton had already spent years slipping through the cracks. He was born in 1946 in Atlanta, Georgia. His childhood was chaotic. His father left early, and Hilton reportedly struggled with behavioral problems. As an adult, he jumped from job to job. Sometimes he worked as a roofer, other times as a delivery man, but nothing ever stuck. By the time he reached his 60s, Hilton was living out of his van, moving from forest to forest with Dandy. The woods became his home, and eventually, they became his hunting ground. In 2007, strange disappearances began popping up in wooded areas across the region. First in North Carolina, then Georgia, then Florida. Victims were vanishing without a trace. No signs of struggle, no suspects, just parked cars and scattered belongings. But there was one thing connecting them. All the disappearances happened in national forests. No one had any idea that behind it all was an old man hiding in plain sight. Someone who had learned to live like a ghost, watching from a distance, picking the right moment, and then vanishing back into the trees. One viewer commented, "He would rather kidnap, rob, and kill than get a job." Absolutely insane. And that's exactly what made him terrifying. He didn't kill because he had to. He did it because he could. What's even more chilling, he traveled with a dog. People trust dog owners. It made him look friendly, like someone who couldn't possibly hurt a fly. And Dandy, his dog, was always calm, following his owner through forest paths and campsites. But people started noticing strange things. A hiker recalled feeling uneasy after a short conversation with a man who wouldn't stop watching her. Another said a friendly older man kept asking about how long her hike would take and whether she'd be going alone. Looking back, those moments make more sense now. He wasn't being friendly, he was hunting. Hilton knew how to blend in. He stayed off social media. He didn't use credit cards. He kept moving. And because he targeted national forests, most of his crimes happened miles away from cameras, crowds, or cell signals. Police were left chasing shadows. One woman, who had once crossed paths with Hilton but survived, said later, "He just seemed like a nice man with a dog. I never would have guessed." And that's the danger of people like Gary Hilton. They wear a mask of normalcy, all while hiding something monstrous underneath. By the time authorities realized what was happening, it was already too late for some of his victims. But there was one woman, one strong, determined woman, whose courage changed everything. Her name was Meredith Emerson. And her story would not only expose Gary Hilton, but help bring him down for good. Her body was found deep in the forest, but her head was missing. And the man responsible? He was still out there, living in plain sight. Before Gary Hilton became a national name, before his face was on wanted posters and news broadcasts, a woman named Cheryl Dunlap went for a peaceful walk and never came back. It was December 2007 in Leon County, Florida. The air was cool, the forest paths quiet. Cheryl, a 46-year-old nurse and Sunday school teacher, had taken a trip to the Apalachicola National Forest, one of her favorite places to relax and read her Bible. But when she didn't show up to teach her Sunday class or go to work the next day, people knew something was wrong. Cheryl was reliable. She was kind. She cared deeply for her community. So when she didn't answer calls, her friends got worried. Fast. They reported her missing. 2 days later, her car was found parked near a trailhead. The doors were locked. Her purse and belongings were still inside. But Cheryl was gone. Helicopters flew over thick woods. Volunteers walked miles of trails, calling her name. Still, no trace. Then something happened that sent chills through everyone. Cheryl's ATM card was being used. Someone had taken her bank card and tried withdrawing cash from her account, multiple times. But the man wearing a hat and sunglasses on the security footage couldn't be clearly identified. He always kept his face hidden. Police released the footage to the public, hoping someone might recognize him. But nobody did, not yet. Weeks passed with no sign of Cheryl. Then on December 15th, a group of hunters made a gruesome discovery deep in the forest. They found a woman's body. It was partially buried, badly decomposed, and her head was missing. The horror was real. It was clear this wasn't just a case of someone lost in the woods. This was murder, and the killer had gone to great lengths to cover his tracks. One viewer who learned about Cheryl's story later wrote, "He talks about decapitating her and then says she didn't have a bad time. That's wild. It's so disturbing." The forest had become a hiding place for a predator, someone who didn't just want to kill, but wanted to erase evidence completely. Removing Cheryl's head wasn't just gruesome, it was strategic. Without dental records or visual ID, police had a harder time identifying her. But eventually they were able to confirm it was Cheryl through a fingerprint. Her family was devastated. One comment said, "I can't imagine the guilt Cheryl's son must have felt. He was devastated he didn't call her back." That single detail, a missed call, haunted her loved ones for years. And the man responsible? He was still out there, walking through new forests, looking for his next victim. At the time, police didn't yet know the name Gary Hilton. They had no idea that just a few states away, in North Carolina, an elderly couple, John and Irene Bryant, had also vanished during a hiking trip just weeks earlier. The pattern hadn't been connected. Different states, different victims, but the same kind of disappearance, and always near national forests. The truth is, Gary Hilton had developed a routine. He picked locations where people often hiked alone. He avoided cameras. He kept moving. And most importantly, he chose people who wouldn't be immediately missed. But this time, he left behind something he couldn't hide: surveillance footage and a growing paper trail. The mystery of Cheryl's murder would remain unsolved for several weeks. Her case faded into the background of other forest disappearances until January 2008, when another woman went missing. Her name was Meredith Emerson. She was young, strong, smart, and when Gary Hilton crossed her path, he thought it would be an easy kill. He was wrong. Meredith didn't just fight for her life, she unknowingly helped unravel everything. One viewer who learned about both cases said, "Cheryl didn't make it, and neither did Meredith, but they helped stop this evil man, and that makes them heroes." Cheryl's death was heartbreaking, but it was also the beginning of Hilton's downfall, because after Meredith, everything changed. She didn't survive, but because of her, he didn't either. She didn't just fight back, she ruined his plan and exposed his name to the world. It was New Year's Day 2008 when 24-year-old Meredith Emerson decided to go for a hike with her dog Ella. She chose the Blood Mountain Trail in Georgia's Chattahoochee National Forest. Meredith was fit, independent, and loved the outdoors. For her, this was the perfect way to start a new year, surrounded by nature, with her loyal black lab by her side. She had no way of knowing that someone else was out there too, a man, a drifter, watching from the trees, waiting for someone just like her. Gary Hilton had already taken lives. He'd already disappeared without a trace. But this time, he chose the wrong woman. Witnesses later recalled seeing Meredith on the trail that afternoon. Some said they saw a gray-haired man with a dog walking not far behind her. At first glance, it seemed innocent. Who would suspect anything from an old man with a golden retriever? But Hilton had already made up his mind. He approached Meredith on the trail. We may never know exactly how, and tried to overpower her. But Meredith was strong. She didn't give up easily. One YouTube viewer said, "Meredith tried so hard. It's so sad she didn't make it. But her fight helped catch that monster. And that fight, it changed everything." Meredith struggled for her life. She kicked, she screamed, she made noise. She did everything a self-defense guide would recommend. And while Hilton eventually overpowered her, her resistance threw off his plan. He couldn't kill her right away, not like the others. Instead, he kept her alive for 4 days. During that time, he made her give him her PIN code, tried to withdraw money from her account, and even moved from location to location, trying to stay hidden. But Meredith kept giving him the wrong pin, over and over. That simple act stalled him, and each delay brought police closer. Back in town, Meredith's friends were panicking. She hadn't returned calls or texts. When she didn't show up to work, people raised the alarm. Police found her abandoned car at the trailhead. Not long after, her dog Ella was spotted wandering alone, several miles away. Ella was covered in mud, but unharmed. Search teams were activated. The case was spreading fast. And then security footage revealed a man trying to use Meredith's bank card at an ATM, disguised with a hat and sunglasses. It was the same blurry figure seen in the footage from Cheryl Dunlap's case. Police knew then, this wasn't random. This was a serial predator. The break came when someone recognized Gary Hilton at a gas station. He had blood in his van. He was acting strangely. And this time someone spoke up. One viewer wrote, "I'm loving the people who called in when they saw him. It's because of them he finally got caught." Police caught up with Hilton quickly. He was arrested. And when they opened his van, they found blood, Meredith's belongings, and enough evidence to end his freedom for good. But the moment that hit the hardest, Gary Hilton confessed, coldly, without emotion. He admitted that Meredith had fought so hard, that she was smart, quick-thinking, and strong-willed. But then he said something that made viewers sick to their stomachs. He claimed she eventually stopped fighting back. One person commented, "That woman didn't give up. She was unconscious or too injured. That man is a liar and a narcissist." And that's the truth. Meredith never gave up. She held on for 4 days, outwitting him, resisting, delaying. And in the end, her strength led to his capture. Sadly, Meredith didn't survive, but her courage saved future lives. Her story united communities. It reminded hikers to be alert. It taught the public that even the most normal-looking person can hide evil inside. Gary Hilton thought he was too smart to be caught, but Meredith proved otherwise. One viewer put it beautifully. She damaged his ego. That's why he couldn't kill her right away. She wasn't a victim, she was a fighter. In memory of Meredith Emerson, a scholarship was later created in her name. Her dog Ella was adopted by a loving family. And every time we tell her story, every time we remember her bravery, we remind the world that evil doesn't win in silence. He thought he was smarter than everyone else. He thought he could talk his way out. But this time, the forest didn't protect him. He was caught. January 4th, 2008. Just 3 days after Meredith Emerson went missing, the man responsible, Gary Michael Hilton, was finally in handcuffs. And it wasn't because of high-tech tracking, drones, or undercover agents. It was because regular people noticed something strange and spoke up. A witness had spotted an older man at a gas station, acting nervous and sweaty. His van looked dirty, and he had a dog with him. The witness noticed what looked like blood inside the vehicle. They remembered the police alerts, the ATM footage, the missing hiker, and they called it in. When officers arrived, Hilton was still in the parking lot. He didn't try to run. He didn't protest. In fact, when they asked for ID, he calmly gave them his name, Gary Hilton. Just like that, the man who had haunted forest trails across 3 states was finally caught. One YouTube commenter wrote, "I love that people were calling in sightings, and the joy when cops took him down. I felt that." Police took him in for questioning. What happened next shocked even experienced investigators. Hilton talked, a lot, and he wasn't nervous, angry, or afraid. He was relaxed, almost pleased. He admitted to taking Meredith Emerson. He described the struggle. He told them how she fought hard, outsmarted him, delayed him. But in the end, he said he killed her. Just like that. No tears, no remorse. Viewers later reacted to the interrogation footage with horror. One said he was enjoying himself immensely during the interrogation, bragging to the cops, like he wanted to be remembered. Another wrote, "He made my skin crawl. I couldn't watch the whole video. He was so narcissistic, so full of himself." Investigators said Hilton acted like he was giving a presentation, as if he were proud of what he'd done. He talked about his method, about how he avoided detection, and how smart he thought he was. He even said something so cold, so disturbing it stuck with viewers everywhere. "You either kill them, or you get caught." Someone online replied, "Says the maggot in an orange jumpsuit, after killing and still getting caught." That line became a symbol of how deeply twisted Hilton's mind really was. He didn't just commit horrific crimes. He enjoyed telling the story of how he did it. As detectives dug deeper, they found evidence in his van, blood, Meredith's ID, and clothing. They also connected him to Cheryl Dunlap's murder in Florida, and possibly to the earlier disappearance of an elderly couple, John and Irene Bryant, in North Carolina. The FBI got involved. Multiple states opened cases. Suddenly, Gary Hilton wasn't just a kidnapper. He was now considered a serial killer. But what truly stunned people was how ordinary he looked. At the time of his arrest, Hilton was 61 years old, slim build, balding, soft-spoken. Nothing about him screamed danger. He looked like someone's grandpa, someone you might walk past at the park and never think twice about. And that's what made him so terrifying. One viewer said, "Safe to say he thought he was way smarter than he really was." Another added, "He'd rather murder than get a job." That says it all. Hilton had lived most of his adult life off the grid. He scammed people, did odd jobs, and stayed mobile. But now, after years of slipping through the cracks, he was behind bars. No more hiking trails, no more victims, just a cold cell and a dog that would never walk beside him again. Even his dog, Dandy, was affected by the arrest. Viewers were heartbroken thinking about the innocent animal that had followed Hilton everywhere without knowing what kind of man he really was. One viewer said, "It's sad his sweet dog learned from his owner how to creep on people. I'm just glad Dandy was adopted by a normal family." In the weeks that followed, Hilton was formally charged with Meredith Emerson's murder. He led authorities to her body, deep in the Dawson forest, buried and hidden beneath leaves. In exchange for helping them locate her, he avoided the death penalty in Georgia. But that didn't mean he was done facing justice, because Florida had other plans. The arrest of Gary Hilton was only the beginning. Now investigators were digging into every forest-related disappearance across the region, and more pieces of the puzzle were about to fall into place, leading to a courtroom, a death sentence, and even more disturbing revelations about what Hilton had done. He didn't stutter. He didn't cry. He smiled. He wanted the world to know what he did, and he wanted to be remembered for it. Once Gary Hilton was arrested, many believed the story was over. But for those who had to sit and listen to what he said next, detectives, prosecutors, even the public, it was just beginning. Because once Hilton started talking, it became clear he wasn't just a man who killed, he was a man who wanted attention for it. He wanted people to know he was clever, that he had gotten away with it for years, that in his mind he was smarter than everyone else. And the way he told the story, calm, cold, almost proud. Investigators who sat across from Hilton said he showed no real remorse, no sadness, no guilt. He described the way he chose his victims, targeting hikers who were alone, who looked small or easy to control. He talked about the remote areas, the quiet trails, the way he studied their routines. He even explained how he would approach them with a smile, with his dog Dandy beside him, to make them feel safe. One viewer put it this way, "He's the worst kind of evil, the kind that wears a mask, polite, quiet, and completely empty inside." What truly shocked people wasn't just what he did, but how he spoke about it. He claimed that Meredith Emerson didn't have such a bad time with him, even though he held her captive for 4 days, beat her, and eventually murdered her. He described his victims like they were part of a game, a challenge he had solved. He even complained about the inconvenience of having to clean up after himself. One comment said, talking about how she didn't suffer, then saying he decapitated her in the same sentence. That's wild. Completely delusional. Another wrote, listening to him talk about how she gave up is so offensive. She didn't give up, she was beaten into unconsciousness. He's a liar and a narcissist. And yet, Hilton didn't seem to care. In his eyes, he wasn't a villain. He was a man who had outsmarted society, a survivor, a hunter. During interviews, he made subtle jabs at the justice system. He blamed his circumstances, his poverty, even his age. But at the same time, he took weird pride in the way he executed his crimes. He talked about how the forest gave him cover, how he planned to keep moving, how he thought he could keep getting away with it. And if not for one brave woman who resisted him, Meredith, he might have continued. But it wasn't just police and prosecutors who got to hear Gary Hilton's twisted mind. As his trial approached, the public began to see footage from the interrogations, interviews, courtroom clips, and the internet exploded with reactions. One viewer said, "He made me feel physically ill. He wasn't just a killer, he was proud of being a killer. That's what made him so dangerous." Another person wrote, "He was disgusting. The way he smiled, talked about his victims like they were nothing. It was like he thought this was a show, and he was the star." And in many ways, that's exactly how Hilton saw himself, as the center of attention. Even when the subject was murder, psychologists who studied Hilton described him as a classic narcissist. He had no empathy, no regard for others, and no shame. Everything was about him, his needs, his wants, his survival. And if someone got in the way, even a kind nurse like Cheryl Dunlap, or a strong fighter like Meredith Emerson, he removed them like an obstacle. To him, people were disposable, and that truth became clearer the more he talked. But despite his twisted attempts to seem powerful, viewers saw through the act. They didn't see a mastermind, they saw a coward, someone who attacked women when they were alone, someone who needed a dog to make people trust him, someone who still got caught. One comment captured it perfectly. He thinks he's smart, but he's nothing but a coward with a big ego. I'm just glad someone like Meredith fought back. She broke him. By now, Hilton had been linked to at least 4 murders, but police believed there could be more. Too many forest disappearances, too many similarities, and too many states where Hilton had traveled without anyone keeping track. He had lived in the shadows for years, and now, in the harsh light of justice, his true self was exposed. Not a mastermind, not a drifter, not even a man, but a predator who thought he was untouchable, until someone pushed back. He took lives, he destroyed families. But when the court finally handed down the sentence, many asked, was it enough? After years of hiding in the shadows, Gary Hilton was now in a courtroom wearing an orange jumpsuit, facing the consequences of what he had done. The world was watching. The families of his victims were sitting just feet away from him. The same man who had taken their daughters, their friends, their parents, now sat silently, like he didn't have a care in the world. He showed no remorse, no sadness, no apology, just the same blank expression he wore in the woods. In Georgia, Hilton was first tried for the kidnapping and murder of Meredith Emerson. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Her blood was in his van. Her belongings were found in dumpsters he had used. He had even led investigators to her body, hidden in the forest. But here's where the controversy began. In exchange for leading police to Meredith's body and confessing, Hilton avoided the death penalty. Instead, he was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Some believed it was the right decision. It gave Meredith's family answers. It brought closure. But many others were outraged. One viewer said, he killed a woman in cold blood, admitted to it, and he gets to live? That's not justice. Another added, he should never be allowed to breathe free air again. But also, he shouldn't get to breathe at all. Still, that wasn't the end. Because Hilton wasn't just facing charges in Georgia. He was also connected to the brutal murder of Cheryl Dunlap in Florida, the nurse and Sunday school teacher whose headless body was found in Apalachicola National Forest. And Florida had no interest in giving him a deal. In 2011, Hilton was extradited to Florida to stand trial for Cheryl's murder. This time, prosecutors were clear. They would be seeking the death penalty. And they got it. The evidence was clear. Hilton had used Cheryl's ATM card, just like he did with Meredith. He had been spotted in the area, and he had left behind DNA, phone records, and other signs tying him to the crime. But the most powerful part of the trial wasn't the evidence. It was the impact statements from Cheryl's loved ones. They spoke of a kind woman who loved her family, her faith, and her work as a nurse. They told the court how her murder had shattered their lives. And when the jury returned with a unanimous death sentence, the courtroom let out a sigh of relief. One comment on a video of the verdict said, "It still doesn't bring her back, but at least he won't ever hurt anyone again." Still, for many people, even a death sentence didn't feel like enough. They pointed out that Hilton was already in his 60s, that appeals could take years, that the system moves slowly. And for the families, every year that passed was another year without their loved ones. One viewer wrote, "Death means nothing if you're just sitting around for 20 more years. And where were the rape charges? He deserved more. It's like he got to control everything, even the punishment." There was also anger over how long it took for authorities to connect the cases. Hilton had been drifting for years. He had crossed through Georgia, Florida, North Carolina, and beyond. In 2007, an elderly couple, John and Irene Bryant, had vanished while hiking in North Carolina. Their remains were later found. Hilton was linked to the case, but not charged immediately. Some asked why it took so long for law enforcement to piece together the pattern. Others wondered how many more victims might be out there, lost in forests, unaccounted for, never identified. What made it worse was Hilton's attitude in court. He didn't cry, he didn't beg, he didn't even flinch when the death sentence was read aloud. To the end, he showed the same smug, emotionless face that had become a symbol of his evil. One viewer said, "He wasn't sorry, he was just mad he got caught." Another added, "If he had never run out of gas, never gotten sloppy, he'd still be out there." That's the scary part. Today, Gary Hilton sits on death row in Florida. He will never walk free again. But the pain he left behind, for the families, for the communities, and for the people who looked up to the victims, still remains. And for some, justice will never feel complete, because no sentence, no courtroom verdict, no punishment can ever undo what he took away.